Right. Good morning, Coach. Trust you are keeping well. We will now begin with our session. It is recorded, and we will make the audio and video recording available to all of you here, as well as those who could not join us. Who would like to have first take? Ashfaq?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Hi, Jake.
Hi, Ashfaq.
I see Goose and Cornell didn't make it. I imagine there's the injuries that kept them out.
Yeah, exactly that, Ashfaq. So they both got, as I told you last week, remember the groin injury and obviously the HIA. With short turnaround Saturday to Friday. So, they were both unavailable. So they've obviously gone back to South Africa to get ready, hopefully for next week.
So it's not long-term injuries?
No, the one was obviously HIA. So that's 10 days or whatever. So he should be all right to be available next week. But I know he's been invited into that Springbok training camp next week. So yeah, that'll be obviously his first priority. And then Cornell, the feedback I got today from Doc Ashfaq is that he's coming along nicely. And hopefully he'll be able to join us on Monday or Tuesday when we start training.
And just about all the other changes, new front row, Bismarck there, and David Kriel at wing.
Well, Ashfaq, to be, what happens? I think Bismarck, he played quite nicely when he came off the bench. He's probably fresher now that Jan Hendricks played a lot of rugby. Set piece wise, I think, again, it'll give us a little bit more balance at the set piece and experience there, especially with a young prop like Francois Klopper next to him. So that's the thinking with Bismarck. And then David on the right wing, I think he's played fullback. He understands the backfield. And the one thing Dewald Duvenage does well, he kicks well, especially to that right-hand side with his left foot. So again, I think it's a great opportunity for David to defend and to obviously play right wing, especially with the amount of ball that he'll get from that left foot of Dewald Duvenage.
Thank you, Ashfaq. Ken?
Thanks, Lunga. Morning, Jake. Jake, to what extent have you obviously had a plan in terms of selection, which you spoke about sort of weeks ahead in that, but to what extent have results or performances made you maybe slightly change that selection plan?
Yeah, Ken, I think every coach has an idea of how you want to play a certain team with whoever you have and against opposition you want to play against. But you know what happens, Ken, like anything, you get one or two injuries and then the whole thing changes again. Sometimes you want to try a certain combination and you lose one or two players. I mean, I didn't think I would have no Goosen or Cornell this week, So yeah, I think again, to answer your question, it's not just results. I mean, I think obviously people look at results and say you're changing. I would have changed anyway. I told you that from week one. I needed to. It's a long season. We've still got lots and lots of games. We haven't even kicked off in Europe yet. And injuries play a massive role. Once you lose two or three guys, we've got to try and cut the cloth a little bit differently. So, it's I suppose it's one thing I have learned over the years. You never have the ideal team you want. If I gave you the team I would like every single week, it would look completely different to the one that I run out every week with because of the mere nature of injuries and obviously other things that aren't in your control.
Thank you, Kenny. Brandon?
How's it, Jake? Just obviously Benetton's rested a lot of their guys for that Edinburgh game. It looks like they rested them for you guys as well. They're unbeaten at home this season. Are you guys wary of walking to another bit of an ambush there?
Yeah, I mean, it's not an ambush anymore, Brendan. I think I think what you said is a very valid point. They take home games very seriously. I asked them the last time they lost a home game, I think was in April this year. And that was to Connacht, very close, 21-17. They did rest. I'm glad you take note of that. They rested a lot of their main players last week. So I think, again, that result against Edinburgh is a little bit skewed. They've got, I think, 19 guys called up. I spoke to their coaches yesterday or the day before. They've got 19 players drawn into their national camp, which starts on Sunday. They also go into the autumn internationals. So 19 of these Benetton players are playing Test rugby, and current Test players. I mean, there's some that haven't been picked. I think a guy like Bram Steyn, for argument's sake, who's played Test rugby. So they have a lot of international experience. So yeah, I don't think it's an ambush anymore. I think it's a reality that it's a very good team, and they're not as poor as people think they are. I think the olden days of thinking that Italian sides and Italian rugby generally is weaker is long gone. I mean, the last test they played, they beat Wales. So yeah, it's going to be a tough game. We just got to make sure that, as I said, every week we got to play better and better, and get things right. So I'm not, to answer your question, I don't think it's an ambush. I think we've just got to be aware that this is a tough game. I think everyone understands that, and obviously so do you.
Thanks, Brendan. Ken?
Jake, sorry, can I just ask, you're talking about chatting with the opposition coaches on during the week of the game. Is this a normal sort of thing, or is this like while you're consulting with the referees, or how does that come about?
No. So I'm actually, funny enough, last year, Ken, so Marco Bartolami, who's the coach, he played for Italy, and a guy called Fabio Angaro, who played for Saracens. I've known them quite a while now, and we went for lunch together on Tuesday. When they were in Pretoria, I took them out to an Italian restaurant that we frequent near my house in Pretoria. And they reciprocated by taking me out for a nice Italian meal in the sort of how can I put it, in this area, that sort of famous area for the cuisine that they offered me, and we chatted, and then they asked me, how does it work? How do you train? How many days do you train? What sort of weeks do you have? And we shared notes. I think it's one of the things that he's quite a switched on guy. He's been to the Crusaders, spent some time there. He's been to Leinster, spent some time there. And I think, again, it's just sharing ideas, So we chatted, and I asked them about why they rested their players, and they said they had played 2 games at home and played with their best side. They wanted to, obviously, couldn't play the same side 4 weeks in a row. And also, to be fair, Ken, I didn't realize, I'm sure people don't, but they were only allowed to start their internationals in 5 out of these 7 games before the break. And that's something, again, because they're centrally contracted, basically how it works is they can only play certain players in certain games, and they've got to choose the games they can play them in, So they probably, as I said, and they didn't probably, I know they did, they targeted this game as one of the games where they wanted to play all the internationals. So they had to give something away in the other games, So what Brendan was saying just now is 100% right. There's going to be a massive game. It's almost like playing against Italy. And we know that Italy beat Wales in the Six Nations. So it's not going to be just another hit out against the club side. They're a good team.
Jake, if you took them to an Italian restaurant in South Africa, shouldn't they have taken you to a South African restaurant in Teresa?
Yeah, I thought they should, Ken. They should. But I must say, they took me to an incredible fish place. So I'm not complaining.
Thanks, Kenny. We will go to Cobus.
Thanks, Lunga. Morning, Jake. It's probably a bit of an obvious question, but how important is it for the Bulls to end the tour on a high note tomorrow evening?
Yeah, Cobus, it's important. I mean, every game's important. I knew people were going to ask me the question about the Bulls and, all that sort of stuff. I'm a very proud Bulls coach. Players are working hard. They want to win. We haven't gone from being a good team to a poor team overnight. I just think people need to put things in perspective. To play Munster, one of the top Irish teams, one of the top rugby teams in the world in terms of big clubs. Play Benetton, who got all the internationals from Italy. Play Glasgow, who, obviously on 4G, played really well against us. It's a tough tour, Cobus. Even with good sides, you're going to come here and have to play well to beat them. So I looked at the games in the last sort of 30 games. There's been 6 rounds of 5 rounds of 6 games, barring 1 or 2 which have been postponed. Not many teams win away from home. You get the odd exception now where Ulster won at Lions the other weekend, but it's not the norm, or Leinster winning Connacht. So to answer your question, it's a massive game. I don't want the supporters or anybody that follows the Bulls to think we're just going through the motions. We're working hard. We need to get a win. Away wins are like gold. And this one is important. I mean, it's important. The last game, it can, obviously helps with the morale of the tour. But, last year we came on tour, we won 1 out of 4, and we ended up, 1 game away from being top of the log. So it's not, the season's long, Quibus. I don't think, I read an article the other day where Ashfaq said, Jake White under pressure. Only pressure I have is that I have internal drive to win. I want to win as a coach. There's no pressure on the players. There's no pressure on me from anywhere else. The pressure is internal. And the reason is I want the Bulls to do well. I want the Bulls to grow, and I want the Bulls to win as much as they can. So, I don't, as I said, I don't change anything. We want to win. We prepare. Boys are working hard. They were in here just now looking at some lineouts. Preparation is, as it always is, as professional as it can be. And we've just got to improve, Quibus. I mean, we've got to play our best rugby in the last 3 games of this tournament. That's the most important. The last 3 games should be quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. If you play your best rugby in those 3 weeks, you win the competition. And that's all we got to get to, is we've got to make sure the graph is at its highest peak in the finals.
Cobus, follow-up question, or we can move to Heinz?
I'm fine. Thanks,
Heinz?
Lunga. Thanks, Jake.
Thanks, Lunga. Hi, Jake. Hope you're doing well. Jake, I know you can't do anything about this type of thing, but we've seen with how you've managed Johan, just how valuable you consider him to your cause. You've been quite measured, and he's obviously, had the setback now with the HIA. And you can't prevent him, being selected for Springbok training camps. But given the talk, that he might have a role to play, on the European tour, do you believe in terms of match fitness he's actually ready? Because it has been a bit of a stop-start, start to his recovery, from that injury.
Heinz, that's a very good question. I feel sorry for him, Heinz, because I think people have this expectation. It happened in this last 2 games when he's played for us, that he's going to just arrive on the field, wave a wand, and he's going to be the best player in the whole competition, He was on fire last year. I mean, he was by far the best player in the competition last year. And then he was out for 11 months. And I haven't coached a guy ever that comes back from 11-month injury and just basically pulls the strings and becomes, I don't think the best players in the world have ever done it, So, and I'm talking about overseas best players. So, I feel sorry for him. He has a burning desire to be a Springbok. He has a burning desire to get back into the national team. Whether he's ready, obviously I don't think he's where he wants to be. But I think it's like everything in life. There's opportunities that come at different times, and you've got to be good enough and tough enough to take those opportunities. And one thing I know, Heinz, he's tough enough. He's driven enough. It's not ideal. I mean, I would like him to have played a lot more rugby and go into that setup. But he's going into a good team. He's going into a very, very good team. He's going to a Springbok team that are world champions, and he's going into a team where they settled. So I suppose it's very difficult for me to say. I mean, ideally, that's the real world. You want him to have lots of games under his belt. You want him to have been playing like he was playing this time last year. I mean, he beat the SAA side on his own when we played them in Cape Town, and that was against all the foreign players who played overseas. I signed him till 2026, Heinz, and that's why I handled him like I do. I've got a long-term plan for him, but our goal was always to get him back into the national setup. That was part of the talk I had with him when he joined us. And ideally, it's probably a little bit more time, but the burning desire and the drive he has to be a Springbok. All I can say is that I hope that the public are as patient and understanding of the fact that it's where he's come from and where he is now is, firstly, he's not who he is. He's much better than he has been for us the last couple of weeks. But as you all know, it takes a while for a player to get to that level and fire at that level. I mean, it doesn't just happen overnight.
Simon?
Thanks, Lunga. Hey, Jake, everybody else. Jake, there's a question that's been bugging me for some time. all the time that since I've covered the Bulls, especially as a touring team. You've
Yes.
just said recently, just now in our interview, other teams also lose on the tour, on the trot.
Yes.
But isn't it a situation of a perceived position, or true or false, that the Bulls are not so good touring team? And if
Yes.
so, yes, what makes them a not so good touring team?
Simon, you are the one that makes them a not so good touring team. Simon Rickert, because you write about it all the time. And we don't talk about it. We don't say, oh, we are a bad touring team. I mean, we won as many games last year away from home as any other team did, a South African team. No one beat Munster last year away, if I recall. No one beat, Glasgow away, I think. So the reality is, it is what it is. We know it's perceived, you're 100% right, because it's driven by you guys, the media. I've been with teams, Brumbies, we had the longest winning streak ever in Super Rugby away from home. I was with the Sharks. We had the best away record when I was with the Sharks. What happens now? Now I get to the Bulls. Now the Bulls are perceived to be poor tourists. I mean, how does it change? Same coach, been with two different teams, held the longest winning record at the Brumbies for Super Rugby, more than any team. And then you come here and then you guys ask me, but why do we tour so badly? Well, let me tell you, we've had very tough tours. Last year we had four games against the best sides. I think out of those 4 sides we played, I think almost all of them ended up in the top 8. That was last year. And this year we play Glasgow and I think we're probably Glasgow and Munster. And who knows, maybe even Benetton will finish in the top 8 this year. So I don't think it's got to do with touring or mindset or Bulls or historically. I just think the last 2 years have been what they've been. We've beaten SAA in Cape Town. That's an away game. We've beaten Newlands. We've beaten Province more times at Newlands than anyone else has beaten. So that's an away game. So yeah, I don't think, Simon. I mean, I'm not challenging you, but I'm just thinking it's driven. You guys asked me that question. We don't even talk about it. We will win away games when we get better and the tournament. And we understand the tournament and we understand the teams and we probably get a little bit more depth in our squad. And I'm not, again, taking any away from the boys I have now. We will be able to win. We're not doing anything different to what everyone else is doing away from home.
Thanks, Simon. Percival?
Who?
Thank you so much, Lunga.
Percy.
Goeiedag, sê Jake.
Precies, gaan het.
Goed en self, meneer. Meneer White, jammer om dit aan jou te doen, meneer. Kan ek jou vra asseblief om die antwoord wat jy vir Heinz gegee het vir my asseblief in Afrikaans te gee asseblief. Jammer om dit te doen in jou coach. Die kwessie rondom jou loskakel Johan Goos en hoe groot van 'n terugslag is vir jou om hom nie daar te hê vir hierdie wedstryd nie, maar net oor die geheel. Jy het gesê jy voel baie sad vir hom.
Ja.
Verduidelik oor die situasie in Afrikaans asseblief, meneer. Dan het ek 'n moontlike of can I
Okay.
possibly have a follow-up? So.
Okay, nee, is reg. So Percival, kom ek stel dit so, ek voel jammer vir die kind. I mean, almal verwag hy gaan net terugkom van 'n besering af en hy gaan alles reg kan kry. Hy gaan die bokke help. Hy gaan, jy weet, jy het nie 'n loskakel nie nou gaan hy instap en hy gaan in Alpha en Omega van wêreld rugby wees. En ek voel jammer vir hom. Hy wil graag vir die bokke speel. I mean, hy wil weer in die bokspan kom. Hy wil deel wees van die wêreldbeker groep. I mean, elke kind wat ek weet en hy's nie anders dan nie wil vir die Springbokke speel. So ek wil net hê die mense buite en veral die bulle ondersteuners moet verstaan hy's lank weg van waar hy moet wees. Jy kan nie 11 maande uit die game uit wees nie, veral dit op loskakel waar jy al die besluitnemings maak en jy weet jy's basically die generaal van die spel. So ja, ek is bly vir sy part. Ek is bly hy's nou terug in die rangorde. Ek is bly hulle sien hom as 'n Springbok weer. Ek is bly hy's uitgenooi na die oefenkamp toe. Maar ek wil net vir almal sê, jy weet, net bietjie patient wees. Dit gaan 'n lang tydjie vat. Hy's talentvol, baie talentvol. Hy het vir die jaar die SA span op sy eie gewen en al daai spelers was van oorsese klubs gewees. So dit wys jou net, jy weet, hy's in ons land, hy's in ons span. Hy kan uitstekende rugby speel maak. Ons moet ook net bietjie patient wees. Dit gaan tyd vat en ek sou graag gehad het hy baie meer vir ons gespeel, maar weet as ek sê, ek ry hom hoog genoeg om te weet, jy kry nie altyd die kanse wat jy wil hê op jou tyd nie, jy kry dit op ander tye. En hy's gedrewe, jy weet, hy's 'n driven ouetjie en ek is seker hy gaan die beste maak van hierdie toer as hy gekies word.
So meneer White, gebaseer op jou antwoord, White, kan ek dan die volgende opvolgvraag dan vra? Dit is baie duidelik dat die direkteur van rugby by die Bulls, meneer Jake White, hy ry hom besonder hoog, hy het sy kontrak verleng tot 2026 toe. Die nasionale keerders, Rassie Erasmus en Jacques Nienaber praat net so hoog van Johan Goosen. Kan ek vir Jake White die vraag egter vra? Jake White, kan Johan Goosen nog vir Suid-Afrika toetse wen? Kan Johan Goosen moontlik 'n potensiële wêreldbeker vir sy land nog wen?
Sonder twyfel. Sonder twyfel. Daar's nie, hoekom kan hy nie? Hy het alles. Maar hy het tyd nodig. Hy het tyd nodig om te speel. Jy weet, dit kan nie, soos ek sê, jy kan nie 11 maande uit die game uit wees nie en dink jy kan net inkom en net alles reg kry. So hy het tyd nodig. Jy weet, hy het games nodig. Hy het afrikters nodig wat hom back. En dis hoekom ek hom tot 26 geteken het. Ek wil graag hê ons help hom deur hierdie proses. Ja, soos ek sê, ek was baie konservatief gewees in sy oefening tye en goed en sy rehab. Ek wou nie gehad het hy moet te vroeg terugkom nie. As hy nou weer kniebesering kry, jy weet, gaan dit vir hom baie moeilik wees om terug te kom. So ons het baie konservatief met ons mediese span gewerk. En dis hoekom, jy weet, hy het so min gespeel. Ek wou liewerste gehad het hy's reg vir November maand. Ja, en die einde van die jaar vir ons, as om te vroeg in die game in te sit, en ek dink hy's miskien so 1 of 2 games kort nou, of miskien baie meer, miskien 5 of 6 games kort om op sy beste te wees, maar, jy weet, soos ek sê, dinge gebeur in die lewe en jy kry opportunities en dit is nie altyd op die tye wat jy dit wil hê nie, so, en ek is seker hy sal aanpas.
Check, thank you so much for your answers. Good luck.
No problem.
Thanks, Bessie. Ashfaq?
Jake, sorry, just one more question. Were you able to speak to Rassie and Jacques about that situation and your feelings on it? You've been on the other side, you understand what their thinking is, but also now you with your Bulls at.
No.
Okay, so, normally such talks happen between the franchises and the national teams. If I may ask why that didn't happen, because like you just said now, 5 or 6 games perhaps short of where he needs to be at his absolute best, and we all know he's a wonderful talent.
I think you're going to have to ask them that question. I'm not going to phone them. So, I don't know why you're asking me why I haven't chatted to them.
Okay. Jake, just on tomorrow night's game, the last time you were at Stadium Monigo, it was very different circumstances. Just won the Currie Cup and he lost place with the national squad and he had to fly over, and we know the travel, the week was short in that. Now it's the final week of this tour. Do you feel you guys are perhaps just better in tune with what to expect and how to handle that whole vibe, the best team, the crowd get behind them and all those things?
Well, I hope so, Ashfaq. The answer to that question is I hope so. I hope what we got last time, won't surprise us again. I think it's very different. It's warm weather here, the sun's shining. It's, as I said, we've been in Munster where it rained nearly every day. We were in Scotland where it rained nearly every day. It was freezing cold. So the conditions are different. As you say, the best team's been picked. They've got all the internationals out there this weekend. They've got unbelievable passion in their crowd. They too talk a lot about the time they beat us when we were here in that final. So now we get another opportunity to learn from that. We can't change what happened in the last game, but so I don't know. I can only answer that afterwards. I hope that we are wise enough as a group to understand that we don't get caught the same way. But all credit to them. They're not as poor. I'm going to say it again. They're not as poor as what people think they are. Those days of coming and playing Italian sides and thinking, it's a 5-pointer and you're just going to pack your bags and go home. It's not like that. They're a good team. They're well coached. As I said, 19 of those guys on Sunday go. They're going to play against South Africa. They're going to play against Australia. I think they're going to play against Samoa. That's the kind of obviously experience they're going to pick up in the next month. And then I'm sure when they come back to URC, whoever plays them, they're going to use that experience to get better as well. That's the one thing, Ashfaq, I don't often have time to talk to you guys about it, but we don't have that. We got 5 guys. You guys asked me the whole press conference on Goosen. He's the one guy that people say could play Test rugby next week or the following week for the Springboks. When you have press conferences with the Sharks, you talk about 15 guys. When you talk to the Stormers, you talk about 15 guys. You ask me a whole press conference on one guy who's been out for 11 months. So, you can imagine the difference we have. And not taking anything away from what I have, that is what we have. And it's part of my job and the coaches to get those players better. So, they've got 19 internationals last week. I just looked now. Munster have picked 14 of those Munster players. Well, Ireland have picked 14 of those Munster players now for the autumn internationals. I'm sure I didn't even look so how many Glasgow players are picked in the Scottish team, but I'm sure there are plenty. Unlike what we're sitting with, and it's no one's fault. It's what we have, and we work with that. But I can tell you, it won't be long, maybe 3-4 years from now, people are going to ask me about 10, 11, 12, 13 Bulls players that are going to be playing international rugby. And then maybe the questions won't be about one guy who's just come back from injury. So, and that's part of where we're going. That's part of where we want to get to, Ashfaq. Hopefully, in 3 years' time, when you guys are asking me questions, then we'll have a whole front row who's playing international rugby, and we'll have 2 locks that are playing international rugby, and 4 backline players who are on the bench, and then things will be different. But until that time, we've got to learn. You're right. We've got to take what we got last time, put it in our memory bank, and make sure we get better tomorrow night.
Can I follow-up question?
Yeah, thanks, Lunga. Jake, you've spoken a lot on tour about unrealistic expectations of the Bull side again today. They did, however, make the final last year. Just how far are they from that level at the moment, would you say?
Ken, again, that's something I got to be honest. We're not there. We're not there. Whatever reason, we're not there. We're not playing as well as we can. That I can concede to. That sometimes feels like we're stuck in third gear and we're trying to struggle to get into fifth gear. Maybe the rhythm's not there yet. Maybe I put it down to the fact that we've played tough games. Maybe I put it down to the fact that in the third year of anyone's tenure, it becomes tough. It becomes tough to, some guys get complacent. Some guys, feel as though they're not getting enough opportunities. So there are things that obviously we've got to look at, Ken. So I'm not here to say to you, listen, it's only the fact that we're playing tough games and it's only because, we're traveling that we're losing. We're not playing as well as we can. But the sort of thing that makes me understand rugby and makes the players understand is we were here this time last year and we had to look at and see after a break when we got back how we needed to change. We brought in 1 or 2 things, both on the field and personnel-wise, and we ended up finishing massively well at the end of the game, end of the season. So, it's we want to try to get our game better. Are we as good as we were at the back end of last year? Probably not, but that's teams are taking us more seriously. It's something we've got to adapt to, Ken. When I told you last week, Munster put 6 forwards on the bench. That's compliment to me that Munster put 6 forwards on the bench to a Bulls pack. So, a year ago we were getting penalised at every scrum. So I think there's a lot to our game that's improving, but I do agree with you. We're not playing as well as we were at the back end of last year. And the saving grace for me, or the sort of shining light for me, Ken, is it's a long season, massively long season. And we've got to play our best rugby. I repeat myself, we've got to play our best rugby at the back end of the competition. That's when we've got to be playing our best rugby. Doesn't mean we don't get it right now, but we got to, part of the challenge I give the players is we've got to get better every week. So by the time we get to the playoffs, we're playing our best.
2 more questions. Simon.
Thanks, Lunga. Jake, while you're opening up the door to ask questions about future stars, I'm referring to the under-21s that's playing the final tomorrow afternoon at 1 o'clock in South Africa against the Lions. Will you be watching? And would you be hoping to get some indication of your future stars coming up there and ask the questions about them in the future?
Simon, I will be watching. Of course, I'll be watching. It's important for us to have that juniors to keep winning. We've done exceptionally well as juniors, not only in the last few years, for a long time. Bulls junior rugby has been incredibly strong. I just say this to you, Simon. The problem I have is the better they do doesn't help me, because I've got Ruan Nokia, who's 23. I've got Reinhard Ludwig, who's 21. I've got Jan Hendrik, 21. I've got Ulrich Loh, 22. I've got David Creel, 22. The list just goes on and on. Bernard van der Linde, 22. I cannot bring in more and more juniors every single year. And the one thing I am emphasizing to the board and to the CEO is we need to lift up the age profile of our group. If I look at those teams last week, example, Munster, their props were 34, 33, their hooker was 31, their reserve hooker was 30, their locks are 33, their captain's 33, he's got 87 test caps. V.A. Steenkamp's playing in his first start for the URC. You put that in perspective, Simon. I can't have more and more juniors as well as they do. It's tough for them, but there's only so many places in a senior squad. And I think our squad is probably overloaded with juniors. We need to be looking at some older players to join us from overseas. That's our target market, Simon, at this stage. So yeah, I hope. I want them to do well, and it's great for them. And you get guys like Sebastian de Klerk that goes to the Pumas, wins the Currie Cup Junior with us, goes there now. I've heard he's now going to join the Sevens. That's great opportunity, because you cannot hold on to every single good junior that comes through the system at the Bulls. And that's also good, Simon. You would know that our junior systems are incredible. Our club rugby is incredible. And unfortunately, we can't keep every guy who plays in our Carlton League and in our junior sides, just purely because we have so many. The way our cake is cut now is we have too many juniors in our mix anyway.
Cool. Thank you so much, Coach, for your...
Is that the term? The rugby term, what you want? Harder barder?
Harder barder. That's it, Ken. That's it. I want harder barder. That's exactly it. I think the Boer call it manera, Ken. I want manera.
Thanks, Zach. Cheers. Good luck.
Thanks, man. Cheers, guys. Cheers, eh? Cheers.